welcome to this wonderful episode of Higher Ed Live. My name is Mallory Wood, and I am your guest host for this weekend. As your usual host, Seth Odell, was not able to be here, I am filling in for him and will be chatting with you about building a student blogger program. But we will get to that in just a second. As usual, we always have to give a huge thanks to our sponsors, and we've got some fabulous ones. First of all, we have Integral. HigherEdLive is sponsored by Integral, the creators of the Schools app on Facebook. Be sure to check out their webinar series about how they can help you leverage Facebook to increase yield and retention. That happens this Friday and every Friday at 2 p.m. Eastern Time, and we will be sending out a tweet with that link very shortly. Our second fabulous sponsor is Omni Update, the leading web content management system CMS provider for higher education. The company's web CMS, OU Campus, is secure and scalable with great tools and features, deployment flexibility, and an awesome user community. In fact, it was the highest ranked CMS in customer satisfaction in a 2010.edu Guru survey. So if you need a CMS, check it out at www.omniupdate.com. But what would a show be? What would a Higher Ed Live show be without the guest? And that is really who this week's star is. And I would like you all to give a big welcome to Evan Grenier.
Hey Mallory, thanks for having me on. I'm excited to start talking some bloggers tonight.
Awesome. Evan is the Assistant Director of Admissions at Stonehill College and is part of their student blogger program. So thanks, Evan. We're really glad to have you on. Great.
Thank you.
So, of course, we are going to, before bringing Evan back, jump right into the weekly 5. And before we do that, actually, gotta plug the hashtag HigherEdLive. You know it, you tweet it, you love it, so use it, okay? And now let's jump into our weekly 5. First up, we have Andrew Carriega's posts on blogging. If you have never been to Andrew's blog, we are going to be tweeting that out very shortly. You can hear on his post right now, he's doing like this series of, he's interviewing some higher ed folks who are engaged with blogging programs, and that makes perfect sense with tonight's topic that would be part of our weekly 5. You can hear from other higher ed professionals about why it's important to have bloggers. A lot of those topics that he covers on his blog are actually going to be addressed in tonight's show. So I would definitely recommend checking that out. Number 2, students who use Facebook more for self-promotion show less concerns for others. This was something that the Chronicle reported on this week. And I think it's kind of interesting that overall they found that students who are typically using social media tools for self-promotion and as a vehicle to increase their own popularity are more likely to show signs of self-centeredness, most likely to be egotistical. I think we all have seen those wall posts come through on our newsfeed where just super self-involved status updates or people who just post hundreds and hundreds of pictures. What's interesting about this survey, what that really caught me, was that they found that men are more likely to engage in this kind of activity than women. So, you know, I'm going to turn this over to Evan. What do you think about that?
I think that's pretty typical for what I see on my Facebook newsfeed.
Yeah. And I'm just wondering, Ev, do you do that?
Maybe a little bit, every now and then.
We're all a little, we like to share our photos, right?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
All right, number 3 in our weekly 5 is that elite colleges fail to gain more students on Pell Grants, and this was another Chronicle article. It's interesting because the share of undergraduates receiving Pell Grants And Pell Grants are going to, the nation's most financially needy students at the nation's wealthiest institutions have remained relatively flat over time. And those of us who work in higher ed know that many of our institutions are committed to either being need blind in the admission process or really focused and making a greater effort to provide education for students that come from low-income backgrounds. This article I thought was great, and I definitely hope you check it out. It really digs in to find out if these institutions are talking the talk and are actually walking the walk. So I would encourage you to read that. Number 4 on the weekly 5, how to improve engagement on your brand's Facebook page. This was an awesome article put out by Mashable, where the main 3 tips are be timely, be concise, and ask for engagement. And I don't think that's a huge surprise to any of us in higher ed who have been using Facebook for our institutions, but there is excellent nuggets of information in that article, and there are definitely takeaways that those of us in higher education can, really benefit from. So that is number 4. And the last in our weekly 5, number 5, Stumble Upon hits 1 billion stumbles per month. And I'm going to bring Evan back on for this one because, Evan, I don't really use Stumble Upon, and I'm wondering if you do and what your thoughts are about that service.
We also don't use StumbleUpon, and I don't use it individually or personally either. But if they're getting that many people stumbling upon it and getting 1 billion hits a month, I mean, it's something that you're going to at least need to consider being on.
Excellent. Yeah, that's exactly my thoughts as well, actually. So, what would higher ed be without the unsolicited shout-out of the week? And this week, that unsolicited shout-out is going to the conference HigherEdLive, which is going to be this October in Texas. HigherEdLive is amazing, and this is the last week where you can get your calls in for proposals. HigherEdLive changed my life last October, and I remember at the end of the week, I gave Evan a call, and I said, Evan, I got to tell you all about this awesome conference because it really just changed my life. You get to meet so many wonderful higher ed professionals, and it's great. So I would suggest that every single one of you watching put together some sort of proposal and submit it, even if you think that you've got no shot, because that's where I was a year ago, and I was able to present, I was able to meet fabulous people, and I'll tell you what, if there is one conference that you choose to go to this year, I highly suggest that it's the HigherEdLive conference, whether you're presenting or not. But if you have topics that you'd like to talk about, get those proposals in. They're due this week. All right, so let's jump right into the show, and let's bring Evan back up, and let's talk to him about blogging, because that is what we are here to talk about today. We are talking about how to build a student program with your student bloggers, and whether that be from scratch or whether that improve upon the program that you have at your institution right now. Evan and I are going to give you lots of tips and tricks and hopefully convince you that it is an important part of your admissions marketing mix. So Evan, the biggest question of the night is, why is having a student blogger program important? What would you say?
Oh man, if it's the biggest question, I better not get it wrong then. Well, it really is just such an authentic, genuine way for students, prospective students, to communicate with current students. I mean, students nowadays are getting all sorts of view books being mailed to them, all sorts of materials that we spend such an incredible amount of money to send it and to create it. And then they can go and get a lot of the same sort of information from these blogs that are pretty easy to maintain, and it's not coming directly from marketing people or something like that. And it really is just a great way for prospective students to connect with those students on a more personal level.
Absolutely. So would you consider those students have a more authentic view of what are they presenting, I suppose, your campus in a more authentic way than maybe that info card on your college fair table?
Yeah, I think that they are. And frequently we'll have students that will not only mention the positive things, but also some of the things that they wish that would be improved or something along those lines. So I think it really gives just that real feel for what students are doing on campus. And that's really what prospective students are looking for, is that genuine connection, really knowing what it's like to be doing your laundry on campus, and going out and doing college fairs and things like that. Now you realize a lot of students can get kind of nervous when they're talking to admissions counselors, and or it may be something where they don't want mom to ask that embarrassing question. Well, they don't have that on the blogs, and if they're commenting on the blogs, it's not a situation where they need to be nervous or anything like that. So it's something that students can really relate to, I think.
Yeah, I have to agree completely with what you just said. As many people here know, I run the student blogger program for St. Michael's College. And oftentimes I talk to them about, the importance of telling stories in their blogs, and also making sure that they tell stories that aren't always positive, because not everybody has a great day 100% of the time. And I personally believe that when a blogger says, oh, the chicken patties weren't that great, or, the housing lottery was a drag, that actually gains, credibility for them as somebody who's authentically talking about the campus. And as you said, it definitely means more coming from students than coming from staff members. I remember when I was 18 years old, and taking that tour, that student was, the coolest person ever to me, and definitely represented the majority of students at the schools that I was touring, whether that was fair or not. And I just have to say that students connecting with students is an amazing opportunity that you can't get on a daily basis without the blogs.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think a big part of that kind of storytelling is a lot of the photos and other multimedia that students are using and that we encourage them to use on their blogs. Saying it is definitely a great thing, but sometimes you'll just look at a blog and it'll be, almost a full page, single space, and it's like, let's put something else in there that will attract students and something that they can relate to a little bit more. And using those pictures or using those videos can really help to get even more of a feel for what it's like on campus. So that sort of new content and getting things out there. And maybe you have a paragraph introduction as a student, but you're going to have that picture of the dining commons or of that meal that you're talking about to kind of back that up. And again, showing it is definitely always better for these blogs.
Exactly. So, all right. So hopefully we just convinced all our viewers that having a blogging program is important because of the authenticity, because of the storytelling, and as it really does provide a steady stream of new content that can really show off your campus in a great way. But let's assume that some of our viewers, don't have student blogging programs at their institutions. So let's start at the beginning and walk through building this program from scratch. First of all, I always like to say it's goals before tools. So blogs are great, Facebook's great, Twitter's great, but what are the goals that you're trying to achieve? So Evan, at Stonehill, what goals are your student bloggers attempting to achieve?
Well, we like to have our student bloggers really bringing out timely content. If they're going to be going to a big event that maybe it's something that we talk about on the tours and things like that, we want them to be able to back it up with a blog post. And a part of that is really having the right people and making sure you get involved students that are going to all these events and doing these interesting things and studying abroad or whatever it happens to be. So the way that we kind of do that is mostly through our student ambassador program. So the same students that are giving tours that families might be meeting on a tour route or something like that, those are also typically the students that we're going to be having blogging as well. So it kind of is a nice thing there. In terms of measuring our goals and what we're looking for, I think it's tough to go to your bosses and say, if we get the student to blog 10 times, it will increase our applications by 100 or something like that. So we don't really look as much at yield or increasing our applications. We look more at bounce rates and how long people are staying on the pages and how many unique page views that we have. So I think those are really good goals to start out with if you're starting one of these student blogging programs.
So are you using a tool like Google Analytics to help you track some of those hits and the bounce rates and all those things?
Yep, absolutely. We're using that Google Analytics. It's a simple thing to use. We've changed our Blogger platform a little bit, and we'll talk about that a little bit later on, but I think Google Analytics is really the best tool to use for that.
All right, so your goals are clearly interaction and making sure that that connection's happening, watching the time on page, all those things can help you realize if you're achieving those goals. And Mark Greenfield says a lot, what's the ROI of a handshake? And I think that that can be applied here to a blogging program in a lot of ways, because you never know if a student's blogging about an outdoors program or a community service program, might really touch the student who's reading it in a way that you really can't measure. Would you agree?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, specifically for programs like you were saying, and with the broad programs and things like that, the way that students talk about it is a way that admissions counselors, view books are just not going to be able to do. In the way that students can attach to it and literally read the blog over and over and over, over the summer, just getting prepared for school and getting excited about it. It really is incredible to see the mark that it can make on a prospective student.
Definitely. One thing that I do want to say is for folks who may have a blogging program now for a few years or some sort of online ambassador program, one really easy way to measure whether or not you're reaching the students who apply is to ask them. One thing that we've changed this year with our Common Application supplement at St. Mike's is adding a line saying, did you connect with us via social media? That includes blogs, Facebook, Twitter, YouTube. And what was really interesting was about a quarter of our applicants checked off that they had connected with us in that way. So I think, for those of you, maybe not if you're just getting started, but if you've been doing this for a few years, you might want to chat with your admission folk and see if that's a possible addition that you could get to your application. And, granted, not every student takes the time to check that off, but we feel pretty good saying that a quarter of our applied students, come fall, have actually checked our blogs out, which is really great. Fun fact, that number bounces to 66% by the time they enroll, because we ask our enrolled students that question too. So we're pretty excited about that. Evan.
Yes.
Now, when did the program start at Stonehill? Because I'm really curious. It sounds like you've got a great program going. How long have you been doing it?
Sure. We started our blogs in 2007. So they've been around for a little while now. I got involved. I started here at Stonehill in 2008 and started with the blogger program not too long afterwards, first as a blogger and then later as managing the blogging program. So I'd say that it's still definitely a work in progress. We're still making plenty of changes to the program in terms of how we're driving traffic to the blog, where we're putting those links. Do we want it on the main.edu page? How we're kind of preparing these bloggers and other sort of behind-the-scene things I think are still being ironed out. And to get into it a little bit more, I know a lot of people have questions about payment of these bloggers, and I can go into what we've done in specifics at Stonehill. When the program first started, up until this year, we had, with trying to encourage them to use multimedia more and getting more pictures and videos out there, we would give them the option to either have a flip camera or a digital camera at the beginning of blogging. So they've agreed to blog, and now that they're going to be getting this camera or flip to encourage them to do that. But then it kind of got to the point where towards the end of the year, they already had the camera, and it was kind of like, now what can we do? And this year, we had great bloggers, mostly people that had asked to be blogging or had blogged for us in the past. So I kind of went in with maybe a utopian view of it, and I thought, these people really want to do it. Maybe we'll just have it kind of under a volunteer basis for this year. And so far, I think it hasn't worked out quite as I planned. I think you do need that sort of some sort of option to be able to get them to blog more frequently, which is always difficult when they're coming up on whether it's midterms or final exams or whatever it happens to be. So even someone that, even a program that's been at it for a few years is still kind of ironing things out and changing the way we're going about the processes still.
Absolutely. At St. Mike's, we've had our program running for actually 10 years, and it's still, it's always going to be a work in progress, I think, when it comes to anything regarding social media. But we've got our bloggers who are, blogging more than once a week. Actually, one of whom is watching HigherEdLive tonight. Gabby from St. Mike's is like one of our all-star bloggers, and coordinates our bloggers and just blogs her little heart out, is quick to pick up new, tools with anything in regards to social media. But, you have the full spectrum. We have some students who put their time in, do it once a week, and that's all. And then some students who might not do it so often. So when you have this range of students who, clearly some are more dedicated than others, who do you have to get to buy into this program? Because you're going to be coming with a range of expertise and experience among your students, and what if they don't spell something right, or if they're using the wrong grammar, or heaven forbid they don't like the chicken patties, so who has to buy in to get a program like this up and running?
Sure. I think first of all, you really need your admissions team to buy in. And if you have someone on staff that has a passion for it, that enjoys blogging in general, just on a personal account or something like that, that's always a great person to be able to be running your program as well. We're at the point now at Stonehill where we also have a great marketing team that they work literally right down the hall from admissions. So now it's great to be able to have our marketing team on board as well, where they have some great ideas about the design aspects, and even other great ideas about what students should be blogging about and which students we should have. So I'd say first of all, you're going to want to go to the admissions people, and it's always good to have those numbers. That's why we talked about the Google Analytics earlier. And if you can back it up with those secondary numbers as well, like how many students when they come in have actually read the blogs, that's very helpful too, to kind of convince your colleagues that this is really a program that we should be doing and that we should be at right now.
Definitely. Evan, we actually have a question from Twitter. One of our Twitter viewers is asking how many unique views per month, if you know off the top of your head, are your blogs getting at Stonehill?
I don't know off the top of my head. What I will say is we did a website redesign for our kind of admissions page. The .edu page wasn't really working for us. And from that, we had just about double the unique page views because of that redesign. So if you can think about where your traffic's coming in and how to get them there and kind of make it as easy as possible to get to it, you can really increase those page views as long as you kind of take that perspective on it.
Nice. We definitely have some web redesign gurus who are watching today who I bet loved to hear that. All right, so continuing on, what in your opinion makes a good student blogger? What qualities or characteristics should we as higher ed professionals look for in those students who we are choosing to have blog for our institution?
Sure. Well, first of all, they really need to be passionate about their school. They need to have a good feel for what the students are like at their unique institution and kind of the cool things that make something special. They need to be involved around campus. As I said, we will frequently have our student ambassadors do those blogs for us. But then frequently we'll have a lot of similar blogs where everyone went to the same event that weekend and they'll all write about it. And that's definitely not a bad thing, but we do like to have a lot of unique events, a lot of unique activities that are being represented too. So I would say, well, the pro for student ambassadors and that kind of tour guide program is that they have a great idea about the school. They know what to say to parents and students as well. But you may get a lot of those similar experiences. And also, you want to be careful that they're not getting that really admissions-y marketing aspect that students are trying to avoid. And that's why they're going to the blogs to begin with. So as long as you can kind of make sure you have the right people in place where they're not just talking about, wow, we have such a beautiful campus over and over and over, then I think that you're going to be in a pretty good spot when it comes down to it for having those unique experiences the students are looking for.
Yeah, like we've already said, when they blog about the positives and the negatives, it's increasing their authenticity.
Absolutely.
As well as the authenticity of the school in a lot of ways. One point that you made that I really want to reiterate is the importance of having students blogging for you that are involved on your campus. A student can be the best writer, the best, English major, the best journalism student, but if they're not involved on campus and they have nothing to say about their life at the institution, then they're probably not going to be the best blogger for you. And sometimes I have even found that the best tour guides don't always make the best bloggers because it's different skills. Tour guides need to know how to talk and schmooze and walk backwards if your school lets their tour guides walk backwards. But bloggers really need to know how to transform that message creatively into the writing process. All right.
Yeah, so if you're starting one of these programs, you really have to start thinking about who are you going to pick? Are you going to go and recruit these people? Are you just going to use your student ambassadors? We've done, again, a little bit of both. We did have a great example from last year where we had a football player that was from California, and he had a really unique perspective to things. He really had that kind of different point of view that we wanted on the blogs. It wasn't really the most successful experiment, I'd say. He had one blog that I still love to go back to where he set his flip camera down and he said, I'm going to go study right now. And he proceeded to study with his sunglasses on indoors for the next 20 minutes. And that was his blog post, which for the first few minutes is definitely, it's funny, it's interesting, but we found that really, if you have people that are passionate about it, those are the people you want. And this year in particular, I had one girl who's a senior this year at Stonehill who tweeted me on my personal account and said it was her dream to be a blogger for Stonehill. And that's somebody you're going to want to have on board because it's not someone you're going to need to remind to post. It's not somebody you're going to need to always be on. And they already have the right messaging and everything. So this year especially, we've had students that have come up to us, someone in the admissions staff or myself, and asked to be a blogger. And that's really the level I think you want to be at, where people want to do it, and then you're not the one pushing them the whole time. So that's kind of where I see things going, where it's more students are going to be volunteering and asking to be involved in the program.
That's amazing. I mean, really, it sounds like at Stonehill you've almost built some clout around this blogging program that makes it an important activity for your student leaders to engage in. And I think that's also one of the reasons why at St. Mike's we've had a lot of success. You know, we're talking about this issue of recruiting students versus having them apply for this. And if your program's new, I think that one of the best steps that you can take is hand-picking student leaders across campus who are already seen by their peers as being involved in activities that are worthwhile to be involved in. And those students, if you're just starting this program out and you get those students to blog for you, then in a lot of ways, you know, you're kind of raising the status of that blogging program on your own campus. And that's one thing that I think contributed heavily to the success of the blogs at St. Michael's. Now we too, like you, Ev, are at a point where we have students, you know, knocking on our doors to blog. But we do also have an application process, and I do want to run through that because it's a little different than what you are doing over at Stonehill. When we have students apply at St. Mike's, it's actually a pretty tough process. They have to maintain a blog and a Twitter account for an entire month. And they just have to do it knowing that, you know, we are watching them. If they can successfully maintain that blog and update it at least once a week, as well as their Twitter account, which we hope that they're updating that at least once a day, then we feel a little more confident about the fact that those students are going to be able to keep that blog for a year or two, or sometimes even 3 years if you know they're applying as freshmen. So I think that if you're at the point where you can ask for applications, that's excellent, but think really hard about what you want to get out of that application. It wouldn't make sense for us at St. Mike's to ask our bloggers to do an in-person conversational style interview, because when they're maintaining that blog, they're not talking to anybody, they're typing. So we wanted to see what their skills would be, what their writing style was like, what that voice was going to sound like, and that's why we chose to have this, you know, kind of tougher 1 month long application process. And I do want to know, actually, switching gears a little bit, I checked out the Twitter stream and there's some really great questions coming in regarding compensation, regarding where the blogs are hosted on, and I want to promise that we are going to get to all of those things a little bit later in this episode. So moving right along, we've covered what makes a good blogger, but what makes for good blogging content? Because you can have a student who will, you know, talk about all these different programs, but what type of programs actually make sense to talk about, and how should you talk about them? So what do you say to your bloggers at Stonehill, Evan?
Well, the content is really what's key. The prospective students will relate to the person writing the blog, but really that content inside the blog is what's the best. Here at Stonehill, we do have a pretty extensive study abroad program that we really like to push with prospective students because it is so big on campus. So we always like to have a few student ambassadors who are studying abroad that will be blogging along the way too. One blog I always like to point out is, I like to call it the best blog ever, and it was actually this year. The same girl who asked me if she could blog, had a blog about basically the way that she knew all the other bloggers. And I had no idea that they were all friends. I'd asked them all separately. But it was really just a fantastic way to show prospective students, hey, you don't need to be nervous about enrolling in a new school and meeting new people. You'll meet people through so many different ways that you won't even think of now. And they'll end up being your best friends for life, that sort of thing. So that was really, really a fantastic blog. And she actually made a chart and everything. So if you get to see that, I would really, really recommend checking that out. But it was just a great way to show that, hey, even though college seems like a big thing, it's definitely something that you shouldn't be nervous about, and there's plenty of people in the same shoes as you. So that kind of content-driven aspect to the site is what we're looking for with our blogs.
I think that if here I am. I think that if our viewers want to take 4 key items away in regards to content, it should be that blogs need to be entertaining, they need to be relevant, they need to be interesting, and they need to be authentic. And we're using that word authentic so much tonight, but that's really the key to the blogging program. But when we talk about entertaining and interesting, Ev, I know that you encourage your bloggers to use multimedia in their posts. And I showed our viewers that chart, and that was quite something to look at. But that blog, that best blog ever, would not have been as awesome without that chart in it.
Yeah, exactly. And that chart might not be, the way you teach her or the way that you draw it up, but it really was just a perfect example for how she met people in so many different ways, and they all happen to be bloggers as they get towards the end of their Stonehill career. So that, any sort of multimedia that gives students a better feel for campus really, really just increases that connection level to the content that these prospective students are hungry for, that they're looking everywhere for. And that's why we're on all these social media pages, right, and all the networking sites, is because that's where the students are. And I really think that getting this blogging program started is a huge way to connect to them.
Absolutely. And, it's as easy as taking a photo of the first snowfall at your campus, if your campus is located in an area where you get snow, or, of the sunny day in the middle of February, if you happen to get that. I find that sometimes just the easy photo post can get the most comments and spread really virally, because people love looking at the example, not just hearing about it, not just reading about it. One other item, though, in regards to content that I did want to bring up was it's important to encourage your bloggers to talk about topics that can apply to future college students anywhere. And the one reason that I say that is, and I've already shouted her out, but one of our student bloggers, Gabby, has actually gotten hundreds of views on her blog solely because she blogs about, on occasion, college clothing essentials. And we, using also Google Analytics like you use at Stonehill, have tracked that she has gotten so many hits just off of those keywords, that she makes her blog very relevant, whether you are looking at St. Michael's or not. So I think that's an important piece of information to keep in mind in regards to content, that you don't just have to blog about how awesome your school is, but think about those universal college-related topics and how that can actually, help with your search engine optimization for your blogs. So moving right along, let's talk about where you feature these blogs on your site. So now you've got the bloggers, right? And they're fabulous. And now they're writing about all these amazing things. Where do you put them?
Sure, we definitely feature them on our admissions site, which as of this year is a new redesign. You'll see that it doesn't necessarily match up exactly with the styling of the .edu page, but I think it really does relate to the students. So we feature our blogs on that stonehilladmissions.org site. And we'll also have it on the main .edu site from time to time. And it'll be frequently the small links that you'll see just about everywhere, where it's YouTube, Twitter, Facebook, and the blogs all together. We find that that's a very good way to promote the blogs. Also, the students that are joining your class of 2015 page or following you on Twitter, those are the same students that are going to be reading your blog. So if there's specifically a new interesting blog post, we'll always like to drop that into a Twitter update or to that class of 2015 page or something like that, just so that those students are aware. Because again, those students that are all checking out your class of 2015 page are the same exact students that are going to be on your blog every single day, reading the same posts over and over.
Absolutely. And the big conversation that's going on with Twitter right now is the idea of compensation. So to pay or not to pay, that is the question. What approach are you taking at Stonehill?
Sure. Well, I talked a little bit about our early approach where we pay them at the beginning with a camera or flip. And then this year we kind of switched gears a little bit, and we just kind of did it more under volunteer service. What I would say in something I think we're going to be moving towards at Stonehill is some sort of a compensation, a pay per post or something along those lines. This year again, we did not have any compensation for them, and they're doing a great job. What we did instead, if you're looking for ideas, is we'll have them for a few dinners throughout the year, and we'll give out like awards and things like that. And some of them are kind of funny, but some of them are kind of serious. Like, for instance, one of our students will get an award of most hits, most unique people going to their website, to let them know that we are kind of still watching and we know what's going on and we really appreciate what you're doing. Another blogger got the award of most commas in a post. He was using a ton of commas, and I thought it was hilarious. So we try to make it a fun thing, because I think that really is what the bloggers are all about anyway, having a little bit more fun than you may have in your print materials and things like that. So while we've done it a few different ways, I think really the way to go, at least the way I'm seeing it right now, and hopefully what we're moving towards at Stonehill, is some sort of compensation program as the posts come out and as they're blogging. I think that might be the best way to encourage it.
Yeah, and being, I think that maybe St. Mike's has started this process of trying to figure out what the best solution is a few years before you did. Sounds like you have your work through has been very similar to what we experienced. We started out by giving them cameras, and then we were paying them on a semester basis back in 03, 04. But slowly at St. Mike's, we also switched over to a pay per compensation. And as you've already actually brought up, it's really great when you no longer have to recruit students when they just come knocking on your door. And what's been very interesting over the last couple of years at St. Michael's is that while we are still paying 12 to 15 students, we actually have a number of students who just truly love blogging, and they're interested in blogging without pay. And so I can imagine that some of our viewers are saying, well, then why are you bothering to pay any of them? And the answer is that we actually ask a lot out of those students who are getting paid. They're not just bloggers. They are actually online ambassadors in the truest sense of the word. They are blogging, they are tweeting, they're managing Facebook accounts, the class of 2015 group page, for example. We also use Ning for a private community for our accepted students, and they're the ones who are managing that space. They are posting photos to Flickr. Some are making video blogs. Some are making videos for YouTube. And we really expect them to do more than just write one blog post a week. And it can be very, very time consuming. And I have made the decision, as working with the admission office, we've made the decision to continue to compensate those students who are kind of doing it all, because this program, this online ambassador program for them, truly becomes one of the most time-consuming extracurricular activities that they're doing on campus. And since they are producing content that's wonderful that we can repurpose and that truly markets the institution, for the most part in a wonderful way, in a very authentic way, we do make the decision to pay them. I think in an ideal world, we could find 10, 15 students who would just be interested in doing this without compensation, but they have so much going on. Evan, I can imagine that the students you have blogging are really involved in other areas on campus.
Yeah, our students are really all over the place. They're at every event. They're really involved students. But one thing I do want to point out is at Stonehill, we don't have a huge journalism department, a huge We have journalism minor, and we have students that are definitely very interested in it, but certainly don't feel like your school has to have a world-renowned journalism program to be able to have this blogger program. It really is a very separate animal, and it is something that students can do just kind of informally, and it's very different than that kind of formal journalism structure.
So another question that I saw a little earlier on Twitter was in regards to hosting, and I think that came from Julie Ann Tuttle. She was wondering, you know, what you're using at Stonehill to host your blogging, your bloggers on. What platform are you using?
Sure. We are on WordPress now, and that's been a recent change as going along with our website redesign for the admissions team, with the marketing team as well. We had until this year been using the Blogger platform, and that works fine too. The WordPress just fits in better with what we're doing and how we're using it right now. I think both of them are easy enough to use. I wouldn't recommend one against the other. Just kind of get a feel for it and check out a few different bloggers and see what kind of platform you like best, because again, they are both fairly simple to use and to be able to learn, and that's what you want for these students. You don't want them to have to jump through hoops to be able to upload a picture or upload a video. You want it to be kind of right at their fingertips, and I think both of the programs work pretty well for that.
Yeah, at St. Michael's, we're using Blogger, and you know, and one difference that I've seen in between the two programs that we manage is in regards to the templates that they're using. Could you talk a little bit about why, or maybe it wasn't even a conscious decision, but why are you having your bloggers, you know, more or less all look the same when it comes to the template that they're writing in?
Yeah, well, in the former format with the Blogger, we did enable them to be able to change the colors and everything like that. But just with the templates now kind of being a little more uniform, it just fits with the look of our site. Our website redesign for admissions was also done on WordPress, so it just makes things look a little more uniform. We think that they kind of can have that creativity through the actual blog post, and they don't necessarily need to be able to have a ton of different customizable things that they may or may not want to utilize at some point. So this sort of template in the format that we're using now really does work for us.
That's great. And it just goes to show that what might work for one school, it may be different for another, because at our institution, we really love the fact that our bloggers have the ability to customize their blog. And I feel that, you know, when you look at, I keep shouting her out, but when you look at Gabby's blog versus maybe Derek's blog or Mitchell's blog, you see immediately differences. And so that almost before the prospective student even starts reading the content, they can immediately see the personality of the student. And I think that's one of the reasons why we've decided to allow our students in Blogger to truly customize their background, the colors, add photos wherever they want. And like I had previously said, you know, a lot of these students, who, especially the ones getting paid, are doing more than just blogging. So we wanted to give them a way to feature their FormSpring account, their Twitter account, that Facebook group right within their blog. And we've been using Blogger for a while. It seemed to work out pretty well for us. But I think it's great that hopefully, you know, between you and I, we've shown that there are multiple platforms out there that are easy to use for students and that can really work well for the institution. Just depends on what your institution's looking for.
Absolutely.
So, all right. The next topic I want to ask you about is in regards to managing this program, because I can imagine, well, and I know from doing it that it can be a beast to manage. These are a lot of students, you know, with different schedules, and they're posting at different times, and the management issue, I think, is maybe what prevents some higher ed professionals from diving into this, because they don't think that they have time to do it. So the biggest question that I have for you is, do you pre-screen your posts? Are you actually sitting there every time, you know, Susie and Johnny and Mitchell are writing their post? Do you have to read it and press OK before it gets published onto your platform?
No, we don't pre-screen any of our posts. Our bloggers have the capability of posting immediately to the website. We make sure we have the right bloggers, so we kind of pre-screen the bloggers so that we know they're not going to be writing anything too ridiculous on there. It makes it more authentic. It skips a step. If we don't have to check it, it's less work for us and for them. If there's any misspellings, I kind of think that it almost makes it even more authentic. If there was anything I'd say I wish our bloggers used spell check more. But that's really the only knock I would have against them. We've never had an issue where we've had to put a post down. We've never had any sort of issue where different content needed to be erased. We do have the capability to go in and to remove a post or to remove different pieces of it. So that kind of takes away maybe a little bit of the anxiety on being the manager of the site. But I really haven't found it to be a very time-consuming thing. If you get the right people, if you talk with them at the beginning of the year and give them an idea for what sort of topics that you're going to be looking for and what sort of if they know who their audience is and they know it's prospective students that are 17-year-old kids in high school, then that really helps them as far as what sort of topics they're going to be posting about. So we really do not pre-screen any of the posts that come out.
We actually take the same exact approach. Every time I talk about a blogging program, I always bring up my favorite quote from Tim Nekritz. You pre-screen the bloggers, you don't pre-screen their posts. And I think that there's the misconception that folks like you and I are sitting there pre-screening every post that comes up. And I am sure at some institutions that's just how it has to be in order to get the buy-in from admissions and marketing. But what's important for our viewers to realize is that you and I both take the approach of pre-screening the bloggers, and neither of us have had issues with that. Our bloggers, I think if they're trained well, then they're going to understand what their role is. And you already said this, you brought it up. It's knowing your audience, and it's reminding them, constantly reminding the student ambassadors that they're speaking to primarily 15 to 18-year-olds who are still in high school and are very impressionable. And remembering the audience and remembering who they're writing for, that they're writing for that 17-year-old versus writing in their daily diary is a really important thing to keep pounding into those students' heads. But if you can do that, it really helps with that content moderation. I like that you brought up too that you have the ability, if need be, to remove a post. And we do that as well. I think that helps ease some of the higher ups' minds. Would you say that you agree?
Yeah, absolutely. Just in case, just because you never know, you should have that ability to be able to take things down, because it's going to be on your website and it's going to affect your image. So, but that's something, again, you can bring to the higher ups and say, if something was up, we could take it down within minutes, within moments. So that would ease a lot of people's minds, I think.
So is a contract necessary then? I mean, if you have that ability to moderate, are you contracting the Stonehill bloggers?
At Stonehill, we don't contract the students. I definitely think it's always a good idea when dealing with students and expectations that you do get as much down on paper and that they are aware of what your expectations are as much as possible at the beginning so that they know what they're getting into. So while we don't have a formal contract process, our bloggers definitely know what's expected of them. And we go over that fully at the beginning so that they know what they're getting into, even though it's not necessarily a sign on the dotted line type contract.
Yeah, at St. Mike's, we do a mix of both. When we talk about our online ambassadors who are getting paid, we are contracting them. As you said, we really write out those expectations because being a paid online ambassador is a maybe lucrative position on our campus that only a certain number of students can hold. So that's why we have taken the approach of contracting those students. But when we have our volunteer bloggers who just want to blog while they're in Spain or during their junior year, during their lacrosse season or something like that, they are not contracted, but they are given the spiel, I guess you could say, about what is important, what is appropriate versus authentic. So, we're talking about this contract and we're talking about pre-screening bloggers, not posts, and so I guess maybe managing this program isn't as time-consuming as we thought, although it is important, I guess, to meet with those students on occasion, making sure everything's going well. And you said that, you hand out awards and stuff. How often are you meeting with the bloggers at Stonehill?
We usually meet with them 3 or 4 times a year, starting with the beginning of the year, going over those expectations, going over who the audience is and different subjects. And then it usually coincides with when we think their meal cards are getting low. If we offer them pizza, they will frequently come, and that's when we'll do the kind of little award things and kind of fun things like that. But it's also a good way to let them know that you're watching and you're still reading the blogs and you're really interested in them. But just to let them know that people in admissions are still taking this seriously and that they should still be aware and to take care when they are making the blogs. That even though it is a fun thing, you're still going to want to at least think about what you're putting out there and that it is still a representation of the school. So I think typically if you can get all the bloggers together, maybe 3 or 4 times a year, that'll be plenty.
Yeah, providing ongoing education and training is something that I think is a really important factor if you're going to have a student blogger or an online ambassador program. I often consider myself to be more of an educator than their manager. Folks like you and I in higher ed actually have jobs that, revolve around social media and social media management. And these are skills. The skills that these students are learning are super applicable to their future careers and definitely resume enhancing. And, just actually this past semester at St. Mike's, we trained our student bloggers on Google Analytics. Which isn't something that a lot of students can say that they've necessarily had training on. And I found it important to train those students with the analytics system because if they better understand and realize the type of traffic that they're getting to their blogs and maybe see the dips or the high points during the year or maybe it's cyclical depending on the admission cycle, if they start to see those trends themselves, they will start to understand the type of content that they are producing is really impacting the audience that is viewing their blogs. And I think what's important is, if they haven't blogged in a couple weeks, they'll watch the views drastically decrease and they'll be able to see that and understand that. And when they think about it, they'll say, oh, that's because I haven't blogged in a couple weeks. So it almost encourages them to post more. And I think any understanding, any training, any education that we as the managers of this program can give to our students is incredibly important. Just for the fact, just for the reasons that I've already stated. So, Ev, let's take it beyond blogging now, okay? Because I know at Stonehill you are experimenting a little bit with other tools, with Facebook, with Twitter. What would you say? Are the majority of your students on other social networking tools, or are they strictly blogging?
Well, right now, our bloggers that we have through admissions are just bloggers. I think the ideal would be to eventually get them to a point where they're doing a lot more than that, where they are more involved with the different Facebook pages, whether it's class of 2015 or the admissions page or whatever it happens to be, and also with Twitter. We tend to not have as large a following now, but we had kind of just been using those tools, and now I think we're using them in a better way that. We're going to be seeing those numbers go up and really a great way to push the blogs. So right now we're using Facebook and Twitter more as a way to push the blogs, and we don't really have the bloggers on there yet. But as I said, I do think that would be the ideal scenario for Stonehill, is to have those bloggers become more online presences for the school.
Yeah, and it definitely takes time. It's important not to dive into 30 different platforms all at once, because you definitely won't be achieving any goals if you're overwhelming yourself as well as the students. But once maybe you're in your 3rd or 4th year with blogs now.
Right.
Yeah. So once you've got maybe 3 or 4 years under you and you're feeling good about your blogging program, then maybe that's the time that you take that next step. At St. Mike's, we are, as I've already said, requiring some of our students to use those different platforms. And the one that I would like to shout out and would strongly advise any student blogging program to use would be FormSpring. I've done an episode on HigherEdLive with Seth Odell on this very topic a few months ago, and I'm sure that we can tweet that link out. But I think FormSpring is a great way to enhance your student blogging program. It allows students, prospective students, or their families to ask your bloggers directly questions. and they can ask those questions anonymously and get answers to them. And there's a lot more details about FormSpring that I'd love to go into, but we could do another hour just on that. So I'm going to encourage you to watch that show because I think that's, if I had to pick the number two, one would be blogs, you have to have it. Number two, for me, it's FormSpring because it definitely is a way to get students to answer questions from high schoolers. It brings the audience in, it captivates them, they get excited when their questions get answered, and I think that's an important thing to use. So we are, I think, just about finishing up. I mean, I can't think of anything else that we have left to cover. Ev, do you have any final words in regards to student blogging programs?
I really think that it is a manageable process. It's something you can get started on fairly easy. It's something that's fairly inexpensive to do to still be able to do well. So for anybody out there that's worried about getting started, I don't think it's something that you need to worry about. I think it's again, a fairly simple process, and it gets great content out there, and students will keep looking back for it. We find that some of our most looked at blog posts are the orientation posts, and that's because students, as it's coming up on it, they're getting nervous about it, and they start searching for it, and they get this great information. It may not even be a new blog about orientation, but at least that information's out there, and they get a really good feel for it. So if you're out there and you're still wondering whether you can get together a blogger program, you can, and you should definitely get started on it, because if you're not, you're missing out on getting that feel out there to your students.
And before I let you go, Evan, we have one more question from Twitter, and it's in regards to moderating the comments that get posted on those blogs. That isn't something that we've yet addressed. And how are you moderating those, or are you just allowing those comments to go up unmoderated?
We're moderating the comments pretty similar to the way that we're moderating the blogs. They can go up. We'll take a look at them. We see when there's an update like that. If there is a problem, we can take it down. But again, we haven't seen any real problems. There haven't been people really bashing our school or other schools or anything like that, or being too inappropriate on those comments. So the way that we look at those comments is pretty similar to the way that we look at the blogs. Is that it'll be out there, and we'll moderate it, but we won't necessarily look at it beforehand.
Sure. I guess I'm a little conflicted when it comes to moderating comments. I definitely think you need to have a spam filter on there, and Tim Nekritz pointed out in the tweet stream that at their institution they have caught a lot of spam through their spam filter. At St. Mike's, what we do is I actually have it set up so I get an email every time a comment is posted. And like you said, Evan, we haven't had any situations where there have been inappropriate comments. But the question I guess I'm going to leave with the viewers, because I guess I don't really have an answer for this, is if you moderate negative comments, does that kill authenticity? It's kind of like when we think about deleting posts from Facebook. I guess I wouldn't really advise that. I'm going to leave that out there with the viewers on the Twitter stream, because I think that's a great topic to keep talking about. And it's something that I guess I don't really have a great answer for, because we just really haven't had to deal with it. So, Evan, I want to thank you so much for coming on and chatting with me tonight. And I want to thank everyone who is watching. The conversation on Twitter was wonderful. And I think that we've had a really great conversation between the two of us. Hopefully, we've given the viewers some tips to start or keep plugging away at a blogging program. But thank you so much, Evan. Thanks for spending your Sunday evening with us at HigherEdLive.
Thanks for having me, Mal. It was fun.
Wonderful. So before I let you viewers go, I do want to remind you that this episode will be tweeted out soon. We always archive the posts at HigherEdLive, and so you can catch that if you'd like to relive this wonderful hour. You can catch that on HigherEdLive.com, and we will be tweeting it out when it becomes available. And also, there's a wonderful newsletter that HigherEdLive has put together that recaps the shows, and I would really encourage you to head over to HigherEdLive.com and sign up for it. One more time, got to talk about our amazing sponsors. You know who they are, but I'm going to remind you. Integral is who sponsors HigherEdLive, the creators of the Schools app on Facebook, be sure to check out their webinar series about how they can help you leverage Facebook to increase yield and retention. That happens this Friday at 2 p.m. Eastern Time. And we have already tweeted that link for you. And our other sponsor is Omni Update, the leading web content management system CMS provider for higher education. The company's web CMS, OU Campus, is secure and scalable with great tools and features, deployment flexibility, and an awesome user community. In fact, it was the highest ranked CMS in customer satisfaction in a 2010.edu Guru survey. So if you need a CMS, check it out at www.omniupdate.com. And of course, what's coming up next week, Seth Odell will be back, and he will be talking with UCLA's Mike Takahashi and Joseph Madella. I hope I didn't butcher their names. He will be chatting with Mike and Joseph on interactive campus calendars. So this will be a really, really great and very relevant topic for any higher ed professional. One more time, thank you so much, Evan. It was great chatting with you, and we will see you in the Twitter stream, folks. All right, bye-bye.